Good afternoon, everybody. I am so excited that you guys are here. So my name's Clarinda, and I'm going to be talking today about astrocartography and human design. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick with you. Alrighty. So just a little bit about me. My name's Clarinda Mann. I am a 4/6 emotional projector, a certified quantum human design specialist, astrologer, and Reiki master teacher. I also have worked as a nurse for the last 14 years. And my mission really is to help people find direction, purpose, and healing through the lens of human design, astrology, and Reiki. And this is probably one of my favorite tools to use, astrocartography. I absolutely love it. And so, just a little bit about astrocartography. It is also known to some as relocation astrology, and it comes basically from the words astro, carto, and graphy. And so it's taking the energy of the planets and kind of mapping them out. And I like to look at it as if we are actually taking a natal chart and we are kind of flattening it and putting it over the earth. And the way that the lines fan out is going to kind of represent how the energies of each natal chart are going to play out. And so this term was coined by Jim Lewis in 1978. And so that is also the year that Chiron was discovered, and a lot of new shifts and healing even through direction and location. So one of the biggest things that I think has to be said about astrocartography is it's not one size fits all. So when I say that, the planets are going to play differently in everybody's chart. It's not going to be just, this is a moon line, this is going to be a great place for me to be. For example, you might have Jupiter and it might be very poorly placed in the chart. And I use these terms loosely because I don't want people to feel like, oh, this is bad or this is good. But there is a level of rating that I do when I'm looking at the planets. So say, for instance, the Jupiter is placed in a position that is not the strongest position for Jupiter. It could be in bad dignity, forming very challenging aspects to heavy planets like Mars, Saturn, Neptune, even in the chart. And even though Jupiter is known as this great benefic, and it really does have that, it carries that theme of blessings and optimism and positivity, but it can also be overindulgence, overdoing things, going to extremes, not knowing when to say enough. So these are qualities that can also be associated with this planet. And when it's not in great dignity or receiving heavy aspects, we tend to see those lower vibratory expressions come out a little bit more. So we definitely are going to want to look at the chart and see how each planet is behaving. Is he being bad or is he being good? So we're going to check and see that. That's like one of the first things that we'll do. And so just because somebody is near a Jupiter line doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to be easier or that everything is going to be great all the time. So as far as astrology, I mean, we can go and talk about astrology for days. It's so deep. There's so many layers to it. You're constantly learning, even as an astrologer that's been doing it for 9 years, which is really a novice on some levels. There's so much that I can keep learning, and there's so many rabbit holes to go down, but I try to make it as digestible as possible, and especially in this limited time setting that we have. So the type of astrology that I use, I think this is really important because I basically use Hellenistic astrology for the most part. I've studied a lot of different astrological interpretation methods. Started basically my career studying in Placidus with the Placidus system. And over the last couple of years have moved into working with the whole sign system. So a lot of people ask me why I have shifted like that. I find that with the whole sign system, I get a more accurate and quick reading by looking at certain factors and indicators in those charts than I did with Placidus. Now, I think that Placidus works very well for me when I'm doing psychological type work, when we're looking at things that might be going on in someone's psychology, or things that might be kind of hidden and different aspects of that nature. But I use for predictive work definitely only the whole sign system, and that is important to note. It's also one of the reasons I love Hellenistic astrology is that it ties in a lot of older methods of work. And that some of these are just really coming back into practice now, like in the last 40, 50 years, we're starting to see them being brought back out to be utilized. And there's a lot of gifts and gems in these older methods of astrological interpretation. So when we're doing an astrocartography reading, and I know this is always like a hard question for people to answer because it's like, it's hard to narrow it down sometimes. Some people will come to me with specific needs and, they're like, I am having health problems. I need to move. I know that this area is not going to be, it's not been working for me. My health has been suffering. Or some people may say, my job, I'm struggling with work. I would like to find a location where I might be able to be more successful, make more money with my career. So when we're doing a relocation chart, that is like one of the first questions that I'm going to ask people. What are you really looking for when we relocate? Are you looking to see an improvement in your relationships? Do you want to make more money and have more success in your career? Are you looking for a place that helps you to feel more spiritually connected or where you can feel more relaxed? So these are going to be like things that are going to be of the utmost importance to consider. When I talk about determining the strongest planet, because people have probably been hearing me say that over and over again. If you follow me on Instagram or if you've heard me talk about anything about astrology, I'm like, we have to determine the strongest planet. So there are a lot of different factors that I kind of look at with strength of the planet. So for example, one of the first things that I'm going to be looking at is the sign that the planet is in. Is this planet in good dignity? So we can use Venus, for instance. If Venus is in either Taurus or Libra, because she rules both of those signs, then Venus is going to be she's going to be quite strong because she's in her home. And what that means is that Venus is in a place that she feels comfortable operating in. Just like I feel comfortable when I'm at home. And if I go to somebody else's house, I might not quite feel so comfortable. So that's what happens when Venus goes into Scorpio or into Aries. She's going into somebody else's house, and she's like, I'm not really feeling it. It's just something about the comfort level that's not the same as when she's in her home place. So she doesn't function as well when she's in, for instance, Scorpio or in Aries. So with the way my method goes, there's like a scoring system that I use. So that would automatically be like, if Venus is in Libra, then that's like a +1 for Venus because Venus is going to be functioning pretty strong in that sign. Now, if Venus is in Pisces, we can talk about exaltation. That's actually like something I would give 2 points for sometimes, depending. But Venus is strong in Pisces. That's where she's exalted. That's where she is at her best. So when we're doing the relocation, I go through and I look at each planet and I start there looking at the dignities, seeing what signs are they in? Are they in exaltation? Are they debilitated? Or are they in their fall? Or are they functioning at their most optimal level? And so we run through that process with all of the planets. Knowledge of the houses. So this is hugely important because understanding what each of the houses represents is going to really help us determine factors like that are going to be associated with where we're relocating to, and factors that may have been playing a part in the location that somebody is currently living in. So this kind of just, going through the houses, making sure that we have an awareness of what they represent. For instance, one of the biggest places that I look is going to be the first house, the ascendant, the fourth house, the home life, the seventh house, which is partnerships, marriage, and then the 10th house, achievement in the world, public life. So let me talk about the angles, and then I kind of think this makes a little bit more sense because this is really the biggest thing that I'm working with when I start doing relocations. It's going to be like someone raised their hand. This is going to be the thing that is going to shift the most when we do these relocations, and the charts are going to move. As I'll show you some examples as we go along, just so you can get an idea. But if you think of the ascendant as the self, the descendant as the other, the midheaven is going to be the one at the top of the chart, the most visible. And then the IC is going to be the most internal. And when we look at ancient astrology, they had a viewpoint, a way that they looked at this to help them understand these principles. So if we think of the sun, when it was on the eastern horizon coming up over, breaking through from the night, that was the ascendant. It was ascending. And as the day went on, the sun continued to pass. At around noon, depending on where you're located, whenever it reaches its highest point in the sky, that would be the midheaven. As the sun starts coming down on the other side, she's descending, the descendant. And then as night falls and she goes and she disappears, is what they would see. She disappears into what we would consider the fourth house, subterraneous. And that is the most inner aspect of of a person. It's the home, it's our ancestry, it's our roots. So these are going to be huge when we're looking at location. And if someone is wanting to move for money, then we're going to be trying to get one of their stronger planets to this midheaven line. Far as career and financial situation, because normally when we see more success in the career, we're going to see financial gain that will follow that. But if somebody's moving for romance, then we need to start going over to this descendant, which is on the seventh house cusp, pretty much. Now, there's some differences here because I do use whole signs. So with the whole sign system, the fourth house, the IC, the MC, the ascendant, and the descendant don't always fall perfectly on the lines. So what happens is we'll see often that the first house will be completely Capricorn, but my ascendant, I'm using mine as an example. So my ascendant is actually at 17 degrees. So it's inside of that first house. And there's a little bit of the first house that's going to be above that. So all of the other angles are shifting too. My midheaven is in the 11th house. My IC is in the 5th house, and my descendant is still in the 7th, but not quite on the actual cusp of the house. So what I do is when this happens, because it happens depending on location where we're born, the midheaven and the IC and descendant and ascendant lines will change. So I look at both. I look at the fourth house. I still always consider that the home, the roots, our connection to family. It has mystical connotations as well. But I will also look at where exactly that IC line is. So if it's in the 5th house, then I'm going to be taking information from the 5th house and incorporating it into what's going to make someone feel at home. So we're looking at both the 4th house energy and the 5th house energy. And if it was going to shift into the 3rd house, then I'm going to look at both the 3rd house and the 4th house. So this is just an example chart of kind of what I was saying. If you look here, you can see that all of the houses are starting at 0 degrees, and this ascendant is all the way at 27 degrees. So when this happens, this means that all of the angles have shifted over. They're not going to be just perfectly on this line. So where we see the ascendant, and oftentimes you have to look for small markers in the 7th house, but the ascendant is going to be, the descendant is going to be exactly opposite the ascendant. So we have an ascendant in Virgo at 27 degrees. That automatically means that the descendant is going to be at 27 degrees in Pisces. And the same thing with the midheaven. The midheaven is actually still in the 10th house at 27 degrees. And that means that the IC, or that point that's going to kind of be a significator related to the home, is going to be in the 5th house. So when we're doing interpretations in regards to the 5th house and the home life, we're going to be looking at the 4th house and the 5th house. So let me see here. Probably getting, okay. So mapping it out. I love astro.com because you can actually go into astro.com. It's a free website and you can find all of this information. Let me see if I can, I'm gonna kind of show you real quick what I'm talking about here. Maybe just a second, but it's easier, sometimes it's easier if you see it than me just talking about it. So because I think that it's an excellent tool if you want to go in and try it and try to see if you can find it for yourself. So
I can place it in the chat for you if you'd like, astro.com, while you're showing it.
Yes, please.
And there have been some questions that came in. I want to make sure you have enough time for all your content. So
okay,
you can tell me when you'd like to take the questions.
Okay, there's a little bit more to go over, but we can take maybe a couple now if they were, because I don't want to get too far from, we can take a couple questions real quick.
Okay, okay, I'm trying to find the first one. A lot of people are saying, oh, that was funny. So I'm looking for somewhere I feel at home and where it will work well for me with my spiritual work. Is that something that you could help with an astrocartography reading?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Looking, like I was just talking about, looking for a place where we feel at home. We would definitely be looking at the fourth house and that IC line to see what planets are going to be close to that, or what we can get close to that. And then I'm going to show you in a little bit about what it looks like when I actually go through it, and how it plays out, because we're going to actually have to make a new chart for locations. So we're starting with the natal chart, but when we relocate your chart, we actually are going to relocate your we're going to do a new chart for the location that we're moving to.
And then I just saw, do you use the north nodes when you're doing or do you use the nodes?
Do I use the nodes? So this is what I was taught and that I have seen in my experiences. As far as now, if I'm doing a basic or a natal chart reading or a solar return reading or anything like that, then yes, I definitely will look at the nodes. And I look at the nodes in astrocartography, but here's the thing. I don't recommend people living near their nodal line. That is just one thing. Usually what we see is if somebody is even with the nodal line placed in the fourth house, people often have a tendency to move away from it. And I don't really recommend people living on that nodal line because it has a karmic connotation and it can be a very challenging location to live on. So if you're going into a situation and you know that that's what you want to focus on and you're ready to dive into that intense energy of clearing some karma, then okay. But it's not my recommendation for people to move there. I've seen it through my own experiences with some people very close to me. And the first thing I said was, you're on the wrong line. And this was actually one of my family members. And I was like, I need you to move away from this line. Yeah.
I find that interesting. And the other part of that question, how does astrocartography relate astrology and numerology? For example, I'm an Aquarius sun, Aquarius moon, Leo ascendant, and all nines numerologically. I mean, is there a numerology? I guess the question would be, do you look at the numerology at all when you're doing a location one?
Not as far as relocation. No, I really don't. It's not something that I've brought into it at this point. I basically focus on the locations. Now, there are some other things that I have been playing around with, but numerology has not made it in there yet. I like to look at numerology overall, but I really feel like that is not so affected by your location. I don't feel like, because it's like based off of my name and it's based off of my date of birth. Those things are going to be pretty much the same and consistent. I haven't included it, but it's a new thing. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll be experimenting with it. So in this example here, I'm actually using my design date chart. as an example. So if you go to astro.com, you can go in and you can go to the free horoscope section here, and you can go to the AstroClick Travel. And I mean, this is a good tool because it's free, right? So when this happens, you'll get this map and you're going to see lines everywhere. They will show you where your moon and IC runs. They'll show you your sun and your ascendant. But this is my thing. So if I go in and I'm looking at somebody's chart and I were just going to say, yes, the moon, let's move to a moon line. The moon on the midheaven, this could be a good one. It could be that a person could be very emotionally stable and connected if their moon is strong. This is why it's important to know the strength of the planets, because if you have a moon that is getting a lot of challenging aspects, bad sign placement, your moon may actually not be playing well for you. So you could be emotionally explosive in an area, like in your job, and you could be, or people might perceive you as being emotionally unstable. So we want to look at how the energy of each planet is interacting and behaving when we're moving. But to get an overall idea of locations, this is a great tool to say, well, yes, I'm living near my Mars and descendant. And if you understand astrology and are able to determine the strength of your planets, then it will give you a relatively good idea of how the energy is playing out on the location. So I'm gonna go back to my other share. But I like the way that their map looks. It's really a nice looking map. So this is one, and when I'm doing this, I'm gonna say this. I use my software. I start with the basics. I do my own thing, my own way. So I go in and I do an analysis on each person's planetary status. I'm going to be, again, looking at if the planet is in good dignity. I'm going to be looking at if it's cazimi or if it's combusted. So cazimi means that the planet is in the heart of the sun. This is an excellent position, but hard to get. So it's basically a 15-minute window that a planet will be in that path of the sun in that way. I think the last time Venus did it was like 2012. So when a planet is cazimi, this is excellent. I'm going to score very high for this. But outside of that, once it moves outside of that and it becomes combusted or under the rays of the sun, which means that the sun is blinding basically this planet's energy. So this planet is not seen, it's invisible. This planet is now not functioning at its best. So when that's one thing that will create a weakness for a planet, that it's combusted or that it's under the rays. So that's things that I will consider with the planets. Those are things, and I definitely look at the aspects that the planets are making with each other, because that's the way they communicate with each other, if we think of it like this. So I do that part first, and then I have my software that I also utilize and I love because it helps to narrow things down sometimes as far as location. And this is an example of that thing. So this is a chart, the mapped out chart with aspect dynamics going on throughout it. And these areas where you see, I kind of have arrows placed in here, but these areas where, like this area that's very bright red, this is going to be an excellent location concerning whatever area I'm looking at. So say, for instance, this is a romance, detailed map of romance for a specific individual. This area is going to be the line, this right here, where romance will be very highly likely for this person, where the energy for romance will take off. So if somebody has been struggling to find their perfect mate or partner, going to this line may be just the little trick that they need to find that right person. And then again, we see some areas over on the left-hand side that are dark. So kind of finding those areas where they are highlighted helps me to kind of pinpoint the regions that I might need to start looking in. So, this is a romance. So here's a detailed map of a romance chart. And we see these lines running off the coast of the US and down through South America. And then it comes back over here, through China and near Russia and India. And then through the middle through Africa and parts of Europe. So when I'm doing this, after I've done all the other looking at the chart, everything, we do scores. And this is probably the part I think that people love the most, because people like to see the scores that they're getting in these locations. And so there's a breakdown into categories on scoring in each location. So I go through, once I find places, or if people tell me about places that they may be interested in relocating to, and or even visiting for a trip, then I'm going to go in and run that through my software as well to see how those locations will score and what areas they're scoring higher in. So I'm just going to kind of use myself as the guinea pig and as the example to kind of show you what I mean. When I found astrocartography after when I was living in Tucson, Arizona, and I was struggling energetically. I was struggling with staying grounded. I was having a lot of physical health issues that were going on. It was challenging. There were some spiritual experiences that happened for me out there, but it was a challenging experience overall, and it was hard. So this is actually my chart relocated to Tucson, Arizona. Now, one thing I will say, there's things that we have to make sure that we have correct. The moon should always be in the same degree, no matter where I'm relocating my chart to. But if you look, like when I was showing my natal chart, or in my natal chart, like I was saying, my ascendant, I was born in Cincinnati. So in Cincinnati, my ascendant is in Capricorn, which here is going to be the second house. And when we move, when I relocate my chart, now my ascendant is in Sagittarius. So basically, when I moved out to Arizona, my ascendant was in Sagittarius. And not only that, Neptune was very closely making a conjunction to my ascendant. So Neptune is this planet of spirituality and, the collective consciousness and just psychic abilities. But Neptune has its other side. Neptune can be about illusions, delusions, detachment, escapist tendencies. So every planet has their high frequency and their low frequency, just like in human design, the gates have their higher expressions and their lower expressions. And when I was out there, this is the reason for the challenge. This is one of the main primary reasons that I was having such a huge challenge, because my Neptune, which is not strongly aspected. If you look, you can see that my Neptune is squaring my Saturn and squaring my North Node. It's making a square to my Mercury, which I was having a lot of energetic issues, nervous system issues. So a lot of challenges going on. And then as well, my Mercury trines my Uranus, which now is in the 12th house. So this is why it's important to go in and assess the charts for these locations, because if people are having health issues, well, for me, my Chiron is normally in my natal chart in the 5th house. But when I relocated my chart, my Chiron moved into my 6th house. And the 6th house is related to health. It's connected to daily routine. So there's healing that needs to happen here. But if we're not aware of what's going on, it can just present itself as chaos and disruption. So I had a lot going on in my 4th house and my 5th house there, with my IC in the 5th house. Now, this is when I go in and do the scoring of locations, there's 2 ways that I do this. And this is when I really bring in human design, because when somebody has a defined G center, they seem to be a little bit more capable of managing the energy of the location that they're in. This does not necessarily mean that they're comfortable or that they actually love where they're at, but it's just that they may not physically feel as disturbed as somebody that has an open G center. Now, I have an open G center. My husband has a defined G center, and I'm the one. He basically has said, I can live wherever. He's like, it's basically all on you, because I can be wherever, but it's me. I'm the one that's sensitive. So when I was in Tucson, this is actually the scoring for my minor aspects. You can see 0, and with the scoring, 0 means basically it's not going to be a prominent theme in the location. 1,000 means it's like super prominent. I do normally try to find balance, because I know that even though people may be wanting to focus on career, we still want to go somewhere where we have a life. We don't want to just work 100% of the time. So I am always considering that and trying to find locations that are going to balance all the holistic, human being, everything that we're made of, love, romance, vocation and career, optimism and opportunity, all of that. So I do try to find areas with balance to it. So this is my score, my minor score. And there's minor and there's major. And what the minor is aspect related. So when I'm doing a reading for somebody, especially with an open G center, I am going to be looking a lot more at the detailed or minor aspects that are in their chart. And so when I say minor aspects, I'm talking about the semi-sextile, the sesquiquadrate, novials, just those aspects that we might not always look at. Now, I'm actually beginning to move into believing that the quincunx, I consider that more of a major aspect right now, because I have been finding that it has a lot of impact in people's lives. But some of the other ones are more subtle often. And so when a person has this open G center, they tend to feel those subtle differences a lot more. But as you can see, my scoring for Tucson was very low. Okay. If I pull this score for somebody and I'm doing a reading with you, it's not going to be on my list of recommendations for the most part, unless you're just dead set on it. And of course, you have to follow your heart and your inner guidance. But it would not be a location that I would just recommend myself. And I didn't recommend it for myself. So once I was aware of this, it was like, oh no, I've got to move out of here. So now here's an example of my current location. So I live in Virginia now, back on the East Coast, near Virginia Beach. And like I said, I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. So in my natal birth chart, my ascendant is at 17 degrees and my Venus is at 26. So we're not changing any of the planets or anything like that. We're just moving the angles. That's what we're doing. We're moving the angles. And so my Venus is at 26 degrees in my natal chart. My ascendant is at 17. But with this move to Newport News, I moved my Venus and my ascendant like within a degree of each other. So I now live right on my Venus and my ascendant line, as well as my Uranus and my midheaven are now closer together. They are, I mean, right on point. And Uranus is actually one of my stronger planets in my chart. And so now I know that living on my Uranus line means embracing the fact that there's going to be some things that happen unexpectedly. There's going to be events that you can't always account for. But I also know with Uranus, the more that you allow and go with the flow, the better things work. Now, one of the reasons that I was so for this location is because I wanted to take my career in more of a direction of technologically related, astrology related, human design related. And Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, and Scorpio likes to go deep. So putting Uranus closer to my midheaven, I walked into the situation knowing that there was going to be more of a potential for my business to be successful when I'm doing work that is Uranian in nature. All righty. So this is my scoring for my current location. Now, this is one where I actually I broke it down from the major aspects and also the minor aspects. But if you look at my major scores for my current location, they are very high, and there'll be a switch here. And the reason some of this switching with the scores will happen when we switch from major to detailed is because with detailed, we are going to start pulling in aspects that are considered minor. Sometimes they are challenging though. And so sometimes we'll see a change in the way that we score from major aspects to minor, because major aspects are going to be trines, conjunctions, sextiles, squares, and oppositions for the most part. And maybe some, like I said, quincunxes. But when we start pulling in those minor detailed scores, we start seeing a variety of different things, and it can change the dynamics and energy of the location. So again, I definitely focus a lot more on those minor aspects for people that have the open G center. But you can see, versus compared to my score in Tucson, Arizona, this one was scoring a lot better. And this is even with my detailed locations my detailed score in my current location, much, much better than my scores were in Arizona. They've been solid. That excitement and instability score comes down quite a bit. So let me just talk a little bit about some of these things though, because this is important. With the excitement and instability score, especially. Now, if it's 0, that's okay. You might not have a lot of exciting events going on where you're living, but we don't want it too high either, because we don't want that to be just chaos. Because when it's a lot of excitement and there's a lot of instability, this can increase the chances of accidents or injury, just things that come out of nowhere, and it's not always pleasant. If I was going to relate this energy to a planet, it would definitely be Uranian in nature. So I don't like to see the excitement and instability score super high in the location. But based on what someone's looking for, definitely want to see a solid vocation and career score. So to me, once the vocation and career score becomes over 100, it's going to become an area that is going to be more beneficial, more noticeable in that location. We're going to see more of that playing out in the life. Now, for instance, in this example here, my education and communication score is a 0. So it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be able to communicate at all. It doesn't mean that I might not learn things at all, but it means that it's not going to be the primary focus of my energy while I'm in this location. The beautiful thing that I do love about this is that we can play with it. And I encourage people to play with this. I learn as I go, but what I found and what I'm finding is that, okay, say for instance, you may score in a vocation and career not as high in an area, but you can't move right away to the location that would be the best. So what about, can you start working with people that live in that area? Can you interact with them or draw them into your business to help kind of bring that energy of that place into your business? So this is somewhere I really want to move. So I'm going to use this as another example. I don't know why I want to move here, but I just do. So this is Spain, Malaga, Spain. Again, this is my chart relocated. So when we're doing this, we're changing the time. It has to match the time of that location based, like compared to when I was born. So I'm born in the East Coast. My birth time in Eastern Standard Time has to be changed to the proper time in the location. And the degrees of the moon should always be the same. And that's one of the ways you check this to make sure that you're doing it correctly, is that the moon must always be at the same degree in every location when we're relocating a chart. So when we get to Malaga, Spain, we see my chart has changed completely. Where at the top of my chart now, which used to be my ascendant, we have Venus conjunct exactly my midheaven. So, I mean, if I wanted to move for a career, this may be a potentially good location. Now, there's a square coming into Pluto. It's not the tightest of squares, especially given that with Venus, I don't give her a huge orb, but that energy there might be a little bit of tension there, and it's in the 6th house. So there could be a lot of transformation that I might experience in this location with my health or with my daily routine. I might be even coming into power struggles in my career with other people. So we start kind of having to interpret this whole chart. And like I said, there's quite a few factors that we're going to be looking at, but house placement is going to be huge. The placement and location of the midheaven, like also here, we see that my midheaven has shifted into the 9th house. So maybe I'll be teaching more if I lived here, and that would be more a part of my career. I'd definitely be working with people from different countries because I would be a foreigner myself in that land. So just things to look at when we're moving somebody, and wanting to see how that energy is going to play out in that new location. And so here's my scores from Malaga, Spain, like super high, detailed friendship and family score. Now that goes back to, I have Jupiter here in the 4th house, and that was a nice placement of it, as well as my midheaven. Luckily, my midheaven moved. It's no longer in the 11th house because it would be running into my nodal axis. But because with this chart shifting, it's moved into my 9th house. Now my IC, that lowest point, that's going to be connected to my home, moves into Cancer. And so when we think of the 4th house in the natural astrological chart, Cancer rules the home. And Cancer is all about the home. The moon is the ruler of Cancer. So the moon is making this nice aspect, even though from the 12th house, to my Jupiter, almost an exact trine. And it's right there, very close to that IC line. So when we look at this score, we see the detailed friendship and family and the friendship and family score scoring very well. So this is a place that I could go and feel connected to the people, feel at home, feel like I fit in, and be like feeling like I'm vital and involved in the community around me. And all the other scores were pretty good here as well. So Malaga is still on my list. And this is the detailed scores for Malaga. I do see some shifts in it, but I'm still willing to take that chance at this point because I just feel called to go there. And the detailed friendship and family score is still high, and my love and romance score is high there as well. So, hey, that's good. Now, I always find it super interesting because you can see changes in scoring and just sometimes within short distances, you can see major changes. And it's like we can move somebody 100 miles and often see a change in the placement of the angles and how that's going to play out. Because you might go to a location and be like, I hated that place. And it might be relatively close to one of the lines that you're on. But that's when those little details start playing a part. Like, we got to run that chart. Let me see what's going on in that chart, because there's an answer. And that's how I look at it. I'm always searching for the little answer or explanation for it. If it's meant for me to find, then my spirit will eventually guide me to it. But Valencia, Spain, we see a lot of the similarities here, but one big difference, and again, it might not be initially something that would be major, but we see the shift in the axis of the angles here. So when we look back at Malaga, we see that my midheaven and my Venus were exactly conjunct each other. Like, that's spot on. But if I move to Valencia, we see that they start separating. So even though this is still a conjunction, it's not as tight of a conjunction. And that makes a difference in how I would probably fare in career. Now, in some ways, it could be actually a benefit if it moved over a little bit more to the left, because it would be moving itself into a more of a trine aspect with Pluto, because Pluto can bring us challenges. But Venus still not horribly placed or horribly aspected other than this Pluto. And it does take an opposition to Jupiter, which is not the worst in itself. But we see it moving away from this midheaven line. So here, career may not be as successful as it was in Malaga for me. Not bad, though. It's still not a bad score. But as you can see, one thing that does change a lot, and this is going to have a lot to do with Uranus, and also Mars plays a part with this score. So excitement and instability go off the chain here in Valencia. Like, I would not recommend myself to live here. And this is actually the location that I first wanted to go when I wanted to move to Spain. And I was like, let me run this score here because I want to go to Spain so bad. And when I saw the score on the instability, I was like, oh no, I don't know what might happen if I'm in this location. So this is a place that if I was going to even go to vacation on, I would have to be extra cautious on a trip there. Like, I need to be alert. This is not a place where I want to do any risky behaviors or take any major chances, because my potential for some type of incident is going to be greatly increased. So again, these are the more detailed scores for Valencia. And even though that excitement and instability comes down a little bit, it is still so high there that this is just not going to be one of the best locations for me to live. I wouldn't even recommend myself staying there for a very long period of time, because I will likely meet with some unexpected events while there. So tying this into how does this relate to human design? Well, I think astrology in itself connects to human design in so many different levels, on so many different layers. And I'm playing around with this. I am definitely an experimenter by nature. And I think it was so interesting because yesterday in class, Karen was mentioning that even though we might be a sixth line, we still, even as we, come on the roof and move out of that first, third line phase, that we still are experimental. And I completely resonated with that, because I am going to probably always be experimental, as well as my conscious Mercury is in the 36 line 3. So definitely an experimenter. And I'm usually my own guinea pig. Like, I guinea pig on myself first before I take it out and present it to others. But this is, how does human design relate to this? So the G center, first and foremost, is the G center defined? Is it undefined? Because when we study human design, we learn how important location is for people that have an open G center. And like I was saying before, I start looking at those more minor detailed aspects because they are going to probably notice the subtleties, the subtle energy shifts in their location that they're in. What gates are defined in the G center? I have been finding that this has been playing a part, having a role in this. And what planets are in those gates? So what planets are occupying the gates that are defined in the G center? Because we can kind of start incorporating how this might play out for an individual. So incorporating the energy of the specific gate that corresponds to the planetary line. That is another thing that I've been really starting to think about. So if, for me, like I said, I live on my Venus, in between my Venus and my Uranus line. My conscious being, now this is just the conscious side that we're doing. My conscious Venus is in the gate 61, and my conscious Uranus is in the gate 43. So now we can start seeing these themes playing out, which I have seen, the theme of wonder, the theme of insight coming into my life a lot more since I've been in this location. All right, and so we know that the Earth has this big magnet and little magnet that's in the G center. So again, that just goes back to say that like location. The G center, I feel like it's always the heart of the matter. I find it to be like one of the places where so much can be uncovered when we're doing either a human design reading or even an astrocartography reading. So the two gates that really come up that I see, the gate 1, purpose. People often like to travel, not always, but for the most part, what I've been seeing is that these people either like to travel a lot or they have moved a lot. And these moves may not have been something they actually wanted, but they may have been part of their life story. And then also the gate 46, and that gate is all about embodiment. So there's a tendency here for heightened sensitivity to location. And this seems to be playing out a little bit, whether defined or open. One of the biggest differences that I noticed is that when the center is defined, it may not be as disruptive for the person as if the center was open, but still they seem to feel it. They can still feel the shifts in the energy and the differences there. So some of the new applications that I'm currently experimenting with and playing with, like I said a few minutes ago, looking at the gate of the planets related to the specific line that you're living on. I think that there's going to be a lot of information and insight that can be gathered and ascertained from doing that. And then also running the relocation chart based on the design side of the chart. So this is something that has just more recently been coming to me, like in my mind, like just thinking about it. What about the design side? Because that is our unconscious, right? And so we might not be consciously aware of how these energies are playing out or affecting us. But when I do a basic astrocartography reading, I'm just looking at the natal chart, which is going to only be the mind or the personality side of the chart. But taking the date of the design date, and running that chart, and then determining the planetary strength on that chart and how that may be affecting someone in a location. I feel like this may give a lot of insight into some of the things that we might not have even thought about that were playing out in our location. So basically, I'm ready to answer questions and see what everybody thinks.
Do you want to stop screen sharing, or?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you want?
Oh, yeah.
You can bring that back up again, because at the end, because I've got the link you were sharing. So Lisa asks, so by the cusp, you mean the outer wheel? There's nothing in my 4th house, but the outer edge is mostly Aquarius, a bit in Capricorn. So okay. I think it's when you were talking about the IC.
Okay. So if the 4th house is doing that, then I would first recommend, this is my recommendation, because it just makes it a little bit easier to interpret. It sounds like you're looking in Placidus. So let me show you real quick how to, let me go here and show you real quick. If you want to go into the whole signs, how you can see this and change it really easily, because it's gonna, this is what I will do when I'm doing a reading. I'm going to pull it into whole signs. So if you go, let me go back. If you go to the extended report, okay, so in the extended chart selection under free horoscopes on the astro.com page, and you go to extended chart selection, once we get here, okay, so for me, I'm using my design date, it'll automatically go to default. And so what we have to do, where it says options for zodiac and houses, we go to house system and you change the house system. So there are a lot of house systems that we can use. And some are good for certain things and certain techniques. But for this one, I go to the whole signs and I switch that. Now, one thing that I did not mention, but I will add in, that I always add, is the part of fortune. So when you scroll down to additional objects, this is one of the Arabic parts, I'm sorry, the pars fortunae, I always add that, because this is going to have a lot to do with finances, and also health. So it's important to kind of see where this is located in the chart. And then you can just click here to show, and it will show in like the whole sign. So because whenever you have multiple planet signs inhabiting one place like that, then I know that it's Placidus or another sign system, because in whole signs, the entire fourth house will only be like Virgo, like it is in this example.
Well, thank you. Maybe you'll want to stay there.
Okay.
But Rainey asks on Facebook, how do you put the person's chart on a specific location? Is it the regular birth chart with just the birth locations changed?
Okay, so let me go back. Okay, so how do I change the location? I go in to edit the birth data. Now, I was originally born in Cincinnati, Ohio. So depending on where I want to go. So if we were using that example, now this is my design chart, so this is not my natal chart, but so it was December the 3rd, 1978, and the time was 1737. So let's use Malaga. They're 6 hours ahead. I need to change this to correspond with the time in that location. So it needs to be 11:33 p.m. for whatever location. And then I need to find that location and change it. But the time has to be correct. And you know this by the degrees of the moon. So the moon's degrees, when you switch locations, should always be the same, no matter where you go. If they're not, and this can happen, if they're not the same, once you start shifting locations, the time is not, the time difference is incorrect and you need to adjust. So then we see in Malaga that chart change and shift.
Yeah, a lot of it went below. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Paige asks, how do we know if we're living near the node lines? Since you mentioned in your talk, you don't want to live near a node line.
And I don't mean that, and I'm not trying to scare anyone, but I mean, there can be a lot of things that come up for people, and challenging experiences when you do live near your node line. So one easy way is to look in your chart. You can look in your chart and you can see if the north node is, so in this chart, the midheaven is in the 10th house. So that means that exactly opposite that IC point is going to be in this 4th house. Now look at, this is challenging. Now, if I go to Malaga, I'm definitely gonna have a lot of excitement. So this, this midheaven is opposite. So the IC is right here. And this is going to be like, say for instance, if you see a node near this point, then you're close to the nodal line, the nodal axis. Does that help?
Well, that helped me. Okay, going on Zoom, using your design date, do you use the same location as your birth or somewhere else if your mom was somewhere else at the time of your design?
That's a good question. So what I've done is, with thus far at least, when I'm using the design date, I'm using it for the design that I received from based off of my birth location.
But you're changing to do a relocation, you're changing the location, right?
I mean, my birth date. I'm sorry. Like, so for my birthday, I'm taking, like, when I run my human design chart, like I have on there my design date. So I'm taking that design date and running an astrological chart for that. Does that make more sense?
Yes. Well, not it does to me, but I'm trying not to lose my place in the chat. I will. Okay, and then Rainey asks on Facebook, "What's the scoring app you're using to rate the cities?"
What? Oh, I score. Yes, I use Sirius.
You use what?
Sirius.
And that's an astrology app?
It's a software.
A software. Mm-hmm. Maybe you'll put that in. Mm-hmm. That's one. Maybe you'll put that in the chat. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. We get a question. How do you know the strength of your planets? So
again, there's a lot of factors that I look at based on, like I said, if they are if it's in a good sign placement. So is it in its home sign, like a rulership? Is it debilitated? Is it in exaltation? I look at the house placement. There are certain houses that are going to be stronger houses than others. Now, I also do look at the sect, because I do utilize a lot of Hellenistic tools, and I find it very accurate. So I'm looking at the sect. If you are a person that has a day chart, which means that the sun is above the horizon, then the ruler, the strongest benefic is going to be Jupiter for a day chart. The strongest malefic will be Mars for a day chart. Now, if you are born at night, then I'm going to be looking at the night aspects, where the strongest benefic at night is Venus, and the most malefic planet is going to be Saturn. So I definitely look at that. That's very important, actually, when we start looking at how planets are playing. And then again, the aspects, I will do aspects. I actually break down each aspect for each planet, and I do my own, like a scoring method, system that I kind of came up with to determine the score of them. And then let me see here, because there's quite a few of them that I actually like to. For the most
part, what you're doing is this is why you went to Hellenistic astrology. That's something that you learned.
Yeah.
Studying, and so it's not something that we can just go to astro.com.
No, okay, no. So no, yeah, this is something that definitely is something I've studied to start learning and understanding the planets better. Like there's going to be, like I said, I look at dignity. I look at if it's the ruler of the sect. I look at the house placements, because there's going to be certain houses that are going to be good houses. There's going to be certain houses that are not good houses. And there's going to be certain planets, because I do also take into consideration the joy of the planet. So there are certain houses that each planet is in its joy in. And that is going to be only for the first 7 planets. But like, for instance, Jupiter is in its joy in the 11th house. Venus is in her joy in the 5th house. The 11th house is known as good fortune, or good spirit, good spirit, I believe. And then the 5th house is known as like good fortune. So these are the 2 luckiest houses in the chart. Whenever I see planets placed in the 5th or 11th house, automatically that is going to give that planet more strength. Now the 12th and the 6th house, these are the most malefic houses, the worst house placements, according to, like, if we're scoring them. It doesn't mean that everything is going to be bad, but a lot of times things can't really be seen in those places, or with the health. The 6th house is connected to health, and according to ancient astrology, connected to like slaves and being limited and restricted. So we're looking at things like that. Now, when we add in the joy of the planet, Saturn actually is in its joy in the 12th house. So that is, like, if I see somebody that has a Saturn in the 12th house, that is actually a good place for Saturn. we would rather see Saturn there than anywhere else in the chart because it offers a level of protection. And so Saturn in the 12th is great. Mars in the 6th house is great. Those are their strongest places. So there's going to be like a lot of factors. I look at the degrees because any planet at 0 or 29 degrees those are critical degrees. So that's important to take into consideration, as well as if the planet is cazimi, combust, or under the rays of the sun. And if a planet is ruler of the 4th house, that will be important as well. I know that's a lot, but
I know. I think that you're going to have to like maybe offer a class.
Yeah.
But not offering a class, can we go back to your last slide again? Because we're coming at the top of the hour. And although we have lots and lots of questions,
okay.
Some of the questions have actually been, I like that. Would you be open to doing a relocation chart for us to understand a recent move we already met? Or do you do relocation charts for couples?
Yes.
Those are all.
I do for couples, but this is the thing. So if we were just looking at a composite chart for a couple, because this is another dynamic, because when you're in a relationship, if I was going to do a composite chart and look at the energy of that relationship and base the relocation on the energy of that relationship, we could definitely do that. But that might not be how it plays out on an individual level, because that is the chart of the relationship. So we need to do a chart for each individual involved in the relationship to find out which locations are going to be best locations for each person. And sometimes that is challenging to find that location that works for both.
I know, I agree with Sin that this was so much information that you did a wonderful job packed into a short amount of time. But on her slide here, she's inviting you to find out more. You can visit her. I know that you put out lots of information on Instagram. And so we have and you can find her at Astro Energetic Healing on Instagram, correct?
Yes.
And
my website. My website.
Which is Astro Energetics.
Yeah, exactly. And I do plan on doing some courses on astrology. If people are interested, it's something that I'm definitely thinking about doing, starting with the basics, because I know this is a lot of information and it's exciting. It's fun to do. People have really been enjoying the readings. But for people that want to learn more about how to do it themselves, I think that, there is a level of foundational, especially because I do utilize so many Hellenistic techniques, and that can be a little bit different than the more modern astrology that we see.
Well, this has been fascinating.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. I'm sure that Clarinda will be going back to look at the comments on the Facebook group, but the replay will be posted all over the place, really. Probably by the end of the day. But thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. This has been wonderful.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad that you guys gave me that opportunity, and I'm like, lots of love to everybody.